All right, we're right at 3 o'clock Eastern time, so I'm going to get started. I assume some folks might join late, and that's okay. I'm Dr. Todd Jardina. I'm a licensed psychologist practicing here in Coral Gables, Florida. South Florida for you folks who aren't local, kind of the Miami area. The reason I'm speaking to you today, I'm going to be talking to you about psychosomatic health and stress. How to manage both, and that essentially it's attitude is everything. That's what we're going to learn today. I'm speaking to you because as a psychologist, obviously I understand the mind and mood, but for many years I trained in the subspecialty of behavioral medicine, and that's what we're going to talk about today. How behaviors can be medicine. How your health can be managed through your actions and through your thoughts and through your mind. And that's really what psychosomatic means. This connection, mind-body medicine, okay? And that's why you're all joining me here today. That's what Kensho Health is trying to do. That's what I think a lot of us are trying to do, is to say, let's really understand this whole person. So today what we're going to be getting into, I'm going to give you 5 tips, little coaching nuggets on how to manage this mind-body connection, how to have better whole person health. We're going to go through the 5 tips. I'm going to take you through them. We have 1 hour. It's a decent amount of time, but what I want to do is give you the skill set. We're going to talk about the skill. We're going to ask questions as we go, so feel free to jump in with questions if you want some clarification, you want to know how this fits for you. This is really something we got to mold it to each person, but I'm going to try to be as broad as possible given the crowd. And then if we have time at the end, I'm going to explain the mechanism of action and how this all works. The model that we're working from here, there's 2 ways you can think about it. You can either think that what we're doing is kind of like the mechanic, that, listen, I don't need to understand how internal combustion works in my car. I just know it needs fuel sometimes. So I know what to do to keep it running even if I don't understand it. Or the better example I use with my patients is that we're going to take an emergency room triage model today. That if you come into my emergency room, my first step is to stop the bleeding. Teach you how to manage symptoms. We need to make you feel better now. If we have time, we'll figure out why you felt that way. We'll do some CT scan. We'll get deeper. So let's start with the practical, and if we have time left in the hour, then I'll get into the more theoretical and explain how all this stuff works, okay? In brief though, like I said, this is behavioral medicine. So what we're learning is that your behaviors are a way to control what's happening internally, physiology. The easiest way to understand this is that there are certain things that are in our volitional control that we have power over, and there are others that we don't. So if I tell all of you out there on Instagram, calm down. That doesn't work. Did you suddenly feel calm because I told you to feel calm? Can't really do that. But if I tell you to stand up, you can do that. You can choose not to, but it's in your power. And so that's what we look at, that there are behaviors that are in our power, and there are mood states, there are thought patterns, and there's internal physiology that is often not in our power. Not directly, and that's what we're going to get to indirectly here, behavioral medicine. This all has a domino effect. The behavior sets the tone, then the thoughts follow, then the feelings, then the physical health impact. Okay, so let's jump into it. Skill number 1, how to manage psychosomatic health and stress. We're going to breathe. And man, I know this is cliche. I know y'all have probably heard so much about breathing at this point. It's become, it's everywhere. But this is a different type of breathing. Maybe this is not quite what you've tried before. I lately have been trying to do some of the Wim Hof breathing. I've played around with a variant of that, the holotropic breathing. There's Lamaze style breathing. There's breathing, different methods to get to different goals. And so what we're going to talk about right now is how to breathe slow, big exhale, calming the physiology. What we want to do is breathe in a way that reduces the stress on our immune system, on our body, on our mind, and then that improves your overall physical health, mental health. So here's how we're going to do it, and y'all can all play along with me. Okay, let's first off do a little check-in. Everybody put a hand on your chest and a hand on your belly, and just breathe normally. Just take a few breaths. And what I'd like you to notice is in one hand moving more. Is your top hand moving more? Is your bottom hand moving more? What's moving more as we breathe? Take a few breaths. And if I exaggerate this and give you the profile so you can really see it, don't do this right now, just watch. there's the exaggerated chest breathing, which looks like this. It's short, it's shallow, it's rapid. Chest breathing is anxious breathing. This is the breathing that we need when we're in a hurry. This is the breathing when we're in a survival state, fight or flight. It's not what we want. We want to reduce the psychosomatic stress, the allostatic load it's called. We want big belly breathing. So let's all get self-conscious about our bellies. It's okay. And from the side, it looks like this. Now, I'm really exaggerating it in the profile here to try to show you. But what we're doing, you've heard this term diaphragmatic breathing, and that's what this becomes. We want to breathe into the diaphragm, structure that you can kind of feel it if you do that. So if I flatten my shirt so you can really see it, the image to get to the diaphragmatic breathing is that I'm sucking in with my abs, I'm pulling up, and it's kind of causing an exhale. So the joke I make here is that on the inhale, you want to look like that uncle on Thanksgiving Day, just really letting it all flop out, filling it up. And on the exhale, we want to flex the abs, pull in on the diaphragm. It's a kind of up and in. It's almost like a Heimlich maneuver position, and it goes. And so the image that we want to get here is that this is almost like I'm squeezing a balloon, or squeezing a bagpipe, and we're using our abdominal muscles, we're using our diaphragm. You can even use your hands if you want to gently, and that's the exhale. And the exhale is really what makes this breathing functional and meaningful. So the inhale is just filling up space. It's kind of allowing your hips to turn out, it's allowing your pelvis to turn down, it's allowing your waistline to loosen and just kind of filling up. And yes, it's going to hit your chest naturally, especially if you're seated or lying down, it hits differently. But so my chest is naturally expanding, but it's going into the belly. Big inhale, lots of oxygen, but the exhale, I'm exaggerating, you don't need to go that concave. But the exhale through pursed lips, like I'm blowing out birthday candles, which I guess none of us are ever going to do again because of coronavirus. But it's inhale, exhale. Now you see the mechanism. Try a few of those for me. I'm going to give you about 10 seconds. Inhale, exhale. One more. So what this does, I practice this so often for my own use and with patients that, again, I'm not going to go too much in the physiology, but in brief, the sensation you will get if you do this enough is one of almost lightheadedness. It provokes such a shift in brain chemicals and in the internal physiology that then and it's also messing with oxygenation to the brain, that there's this exhale and then there's a feeling of wooziness that some people liken to taking a small Xanax or having a half a glass of wine. It is soothing, it is calming, and it all hinges on the exhale. And the exhale, if you think, what happens when you're done with a long day? You plop on the couch. Whew. What happens after a big meal or good sex? Whew. The exhale is we're off duty. The exhale is the calming. And the exhale is what's key here. And so I'm not going to get too much into it. We're not going to be able to practice this in this brief amount of time, but it hinges on the exhale, the flex, the release, not to the point that you feel out of breath. You shouldn't feel gaspy at the end. What we want to get to is, it's called circular breathing. It sounds kind of silly, but it's rhythmic breathing. And so it's a natural inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, and you find your own rhythm. Some practitioners, some teachers talk about it's a 2-to-1 breath, it's a 3-to-1 breath. There's these ratios. I don't like to prescribe the ratio. Everybody has different lung capacity. Everybody has a different set point or baseline. But really it's about rhythm and finding a balance. So it shouldn't be staccato. You shouldn't breathe all over like you're in an anxious state. It should be And this breathing, the best thing that I've found is to listen to the tide coming and going, ocean waves. Have a natural kind of, and it goes faster or slower. That's not the point. The point is that it's rhythmic, it's even. Deep belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, done sitting, standing, lying down, whatever your comfort level is. I find it particularly difficult to do standing, but I'm doing it for the purposes of this. I think lying down can be nice because you're already in a natural, relaxed, sort of almost ready for bed position. Seated can be nice because you're a little bit more, the physiology lines up a little bit easier sometimes to work the diaphragm, and it can feel a little bit more conducive to something you might do in yoga or meditation. It might feel familiar, okay? But the point is that we want to be in already a relaxed space, a relaxed, calm state or environment. I'm going to practice these exhales. There's no pressure, there's no right way. It's the rhythm, it's the belly. But what we're going to do is create a link in the chain. That now I create a paired response of doing belly breathing, which on its own with practice can create this calming physiological reaction. But I'm going to create a psychological connection with a calm state. So right now, if I could wave coconut under your nose and you smell it, you would probably think of the beach or someplace tropical. If I put some lavender near you, you're probably going to think of the last time you were at a spa. There are certain smells that just bring you right back to that place. And what we can do is pair feelings with a memory, with a state. So then the breathing reminds us of the last time we're in that calm state. So right in the beginning of the day, the end of the day, one time when you're already in bed, after a hot shower, after a long workout, sometime when you're feeling mellow, practice this breathing for 5 or 10 minutes every so often, and so then that way you're ready to deploy it and it will create the calming response when needed. But we don't use this right now until we've practiced it because we want the body to know how to feel this calm reaction. If you try to do this when you're already stressed and you have not practiced it previously, it can cause you to almost feel short of breath or like you're going to hyperventilate because the chest wants to breathe the anxious breathing and then the belly's fighting, and so it's got to be something that feels familiar. I'm aware of time, so I'm going to quickly walk you through 2 more sub-pieces of this. We can get into something called progressive muscle relaxation, which pairs nicely with the breathing, and simply put, it's creating we're squeezing the toothpaste tube of stress from head to toe. So the easiest way to show it is with the shoulder muscles. We would go muscle group by muscle group, head to toe. This is a lengthy thing that done properly can take 20 to 40 minutes, really taking your time. I'm going to just give you the overhead. And what you would do is tense the shoulder muscles, pull your shoulders up to touch your ears, really flex, 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 to where it kind of almost hurts. Don't pull any muscles, don't do this if you already have an injury or something, let's be smart. But then what happens is when we drop, now we create a counterpoint. Now you've exhausted that muscle for a moment, so it creates a little bit more loosey-goosey feeling. It has been tensed, so now it's exhausted, so the release lets it release a little bit deeper. It's if you've ever done any stretching, sports-related stretching especially, you want to sort of flex a muscle and then let it go. Flex a little bit more and let it go. If you're trying to drop into that split, right? Some people can just drop in, but you kind of ease in and then maybe back off and ease in a little bit more and back off. And so we're letting the muscles, they're tensing and releasing, and with each release, they let go a little bit more. Pairing progressive because it goes boop, 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 through the body, muscle relaxation with the breathing can be a great relaxation technique for the physical body. And lastly, we can pair this with what's called imagery. Imagery is a little bit fancier than daydreaming, but that's what most people kind of think of. And mental imagery can be used in a lot of different sports or business settings to prepare you mentally for something of action. You visualize it. It's usually then called visualization. But for imagery, what I want you to do is picture your happy place. But it's different than daydreaming in that we're not just picturing it. You're not literally looking at a photo. You're not just remembering, yeah, Hawaii was nice. The imagery is about daydreaming with the textures that you would get in a real dream, in real life. And so it's really about the 5 senses. Okay, you're in Hawaii, where? What are you doing in this mental image? Are you surfing? Are you laying on a beach chair? Are you drinking a cocktail? Are you talking to someone? Are you eating fresh fish? Is the sun on your face or is the sun going down? Are you wearing a dress or swim trunks? Are you in the sand or are you in the water? And so giving it this textural quality, the five senses, really puts you in this headspace to where you actually feel like you're there for a minute. And just like how dreams feel so real, and you really think it was real and you have to startle yourself awake sometimes, with mental imagery, we can make ourselves feel like we're there, and wherever the there is, it's this happy place that, especially paired again with the breathing. Don't you want to be on vacation right now? Don't we all want to be on vacation right now? You can be with mental imagery, but you have to go deep. You have to go into it. You have to give it the five senses. And then your brain is tricked and your body is fooled, and it all feels like we're in that happy place. Okay. For a more detailed walk through these things, you can go to my website, drtoddjardina.com. It's drtoddjardina.com. And on the coping skills section, I have an audio file of me walking you through these 3 different techniques. Okay, and that's just one. We got plenty nuggets for you today. So, tip number 2 of our 5, how to manage psychosomatic health. Worry time. We need to worry better. This is sort of the counterpoint to mindfulness, which everybody knows and talks about mindfulness. It's quite the buzzword in the last couple of years. And mindfulness is about being like very intently present, doing the one thing. And so what we want to do is take that skill set, and it seems counterintuitive, but we're going to do that with our worries. I want you to worry the hell out of something. I want you to, I used to have a quote somewhere in my office, but I'll just tell it to you. Ron Swanson on Parks and Rec says this great quote. He says, never half-ass 2 things. I want you to whole-ass one thing. And that's what this is about. Worry time is about not half-ass worrying, but whole-ass worrying. I want you to put all your energy into worrying about your worry. Seems stupid. Seems like it will create more stress on the mind and body. But we're giving it its place. Right now, I am not running on a treadmill or outside. I've done my exercise for the day. It had its time. It is now done. I can now talk to you. We give things their time. I'm not eating. I've done that already. So let's take worry and give it its time. And if we schedule worry time, what I want you to do is worry the hell out of something. And the idea here is you set a timer, an egg timer on your oven or your phone timer, and pick 30 minutes, an hour, pick your time. But what we do is we say, I'm going to pick one thing. So see, it's kind of mindful. Pick the one worry. I'm worried about my job. I'm worried about my health. I'm worried about my kid. I'm worried about, and go very specific. I'm worried about my kid's health. I'm worried about my salary for the rest of the year. And whatever your one worry is, then take the time allotted and just worry the hell out of that. Don't get distracted. Don't go search other things on the internet. Don't talk to your friend unless you're searching info about that question or talking to your friend to try to answer this question. It's a very problem-solving, directed approach with worry time. And what we do is we pick our worry. This is the worry of the day. This is the thing that's most top of mind. This is the thing that is really upsetting me and distracting me and causing me this background level of distress that's affecting my physical and mental health. And now I'm going to take my 30 or 40 minutes or hour of my day that I've chosen for worry time, and I'm going to worry the shit out of this problem. And here's why it works. Number 1, then you're actually putting intention to it. Because when you're kind of trying to solve a problem while kind of in line at CVS, while kind of talking to your kid, while kind of texting, none of those things are getting done well. And we all know, or hopefully have seen the research, that nobody really multitasks. You're always jumping around. So why don't we do one thing and do it well? So you're going to worry more productively. You're going to be more likely to solve problems if you're just fixated on the one problem. Thing 2, if you worry the hell out of this from 7 to 7:30 p.m., then when it's 10 p.m. and it's time to chill out, when it's midnight and you're trying to go to sleep, if another thought comes in your head about that worry, then you can tell yourself, no man, you've already done that. It's done. You checked the box. Now you're off duty. So it frees us of this responsibility, this obligation, this feeling like it's not getting done, because it did get done. It had its time. And thing 3, what I ask you to do with worry time is to keep a notepad by your bed or keep a note file on your phone. And so then to aid you in being more mindful throughout the day and more present with what you're doing in this state, when the worried thought comes in, you jot down a thought about it on your phone, and we don't deal with it then. We deal with what we're living right now. We go back to the worried thought during worried time. If in the middle of the night you pop up, and when you go to pee at 2 in the morning, you think you've solved your problem, great. That's wonderful. They're doing construction in the office next door. Perfect timing. let's roll with it. If you wake up in the middle of the night and you think you have this solution to your problem, I don't want you to ruin your sleep. I want you to jot it down, and then, great, don't forget it, go back to sleep, come back to that during worry time the following day. So you see, then we keep corralling all the worry back into this space. And that way, it's not constantly messing with our focus. It's not constantly popping in and causing this low-grade stress in the background, which affects mind-body health. We're giving the worry its place. It is something we do. It is problem solving. Handle it, move on. Exercise, be done. Eat your meal, then go do the next thing. So worry time, as counterintuitive as it sounds, is really, it's functional, it's useful. And what it's going to do is acknowledge that we have worries. Some problems need to be solved, things need to be addressed, but it's how it affects our mind and body that's the problem. Most things are not the problem. It's how it gets filtered through here that's the problem. And if it causes you this jump response, if it causes you to have a constant feeling of startle, of fight or flight, well then, there's the stress in the body. So it's not going to stress me. It's going to pop in. No worries, man. Jot it down. Going to deal with it at 7 p.m. Right back to you. And here's where I want to be. Okay, those are our first two coaching tips, but let me pause for a second and see if anybody has any questions. Does anybody need clarification on diaphragmatic breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, mental imagery, or worry time? Thumbs up? We all good? One more thing I should add for worry time. So worry time, there's two types of worries. There's useful worry and useless worry. And here's how it looks, very simply put. Useful worry has a solution. There's a problem to be solved with an endpoint that can be specified. Should I quit my job? Do I have enough money in the bank? Am I interested in having a second kid? Should I take a trip to Hawaii? There's always a yes, no number. There's some answer. Useless worry is, when am I going to die? Will coronavirus go on forever? Am I going to be happy for the rest of my life? Will my kid have a good life? There's no way of predicting the future. There's no way of having these things sorted out with any certainty. These are the things that always end with more why, what if. Useless worry. It doesn't get to an end point. Useful worry is something functional with a solution that, even though it may have a lot of emotions tied to it, it may cause you stress or concern, there is an answer. And even the answer you may not like, but there is an answer. We take useful worry and put it during worry time. Useless worry has no purpose and we should just ignore it. This is when distraction comes in. If a useful worry, if a functional worry, if a problem to be solved pops in, steer that towards worry time and work on it. If a useless worry, one of those what ifs or why problems comes in, I strongly suggest you just ignore it and then watch TV or do another activity or do anything else that takes your mind off of it, because this will never give you satisfaction. Okay. Moving on. A couple more folks joined. Okay, hope you're keeping up. I think we're going to replay this in the story later. All right, tip number 3. We need to monitor our behavior patterns. As I said starting out today, this is behavioral medicine. And if you want to heal your body through your behaviors, we have to first see how we're healing it or harming it through our behaviors. We need to gather data. We need to understand what are our patterns. We need to track things. And this is tedious, and I don't like doing it either, but the outcomes are worth it. The process may not be pleasant, but the outcome, totally worth it. And then it'll start to feel useful and something you can enjoy. So what I ask you to do is to keep a journal, not a dear diary, I was mad at my friend today. However, I would like to know if you had a fight with your friend. What I would want you to do is jot down at least twice a day, start and end of the day, what is my mood state? What am I generally feeling? You can give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. You can put a word. You can give it a 1 to 10 ranking. But you would track mood. Track what am I eating? What am I putting into my body? You can track, and we'll get into this a little bit more later if I have time, but what other things am I putting into my body? Like, what am I consuming? What type of media? What type of environments was I in? Anything that's out of the ordinary. Obviously, if you're in the same space every day and you're doing the same thing every day, there's nothing, it's just the same. Physical movement, sex, any major stressors. Track your cycle, ladies. Any major health concerns? I pulled a muscle today. I had a stomach ache today. Sleep, big one, huge. Sleep. How was my sleep? Did I sleep well? Did I feel rested? And you can go on, but those are the really kind of core ones that I look for. And what we do is, if you're able, in 1 or 2 days, it doesn't mean anything. You look at it and you're like, this doesn't tell me anything. But with the help of somebody like me, or if you can zoom out and you take a little break from it, you might be able to do it yourself, or sometimes with the assistance of a peer. It really helps to have unbiased eyes on this. It's hard to look at our own thing because sometimes we're looking for a certain conclusion. This happens a lot in research, that we try to steer the data the way we want. Oh, alcohol consumption, drug and alcohol, caffeine should also be tracked. But what we do is we look at the data and we can start to find patterns. And we start to understand what makes me feel better. And better's up to you. More energetic, more calm, more happy, more motivated. The better is subjective. But what makes me feel better? What habits, what behaviors, what situations, which people? Who was I around? Do you find that you get triggered and you feel a strong swell of some kind of emotion or distress, or you get upset stomach on the days that you see a certain family member? Do you find that you feel joy and calm on the days that you see your niece? So who's around me matters. It's part of the environment. It's part of what we consume. It's part of what's coming in. But if you think you have fun on the days you go to happy hour and drink 5 margaritas, did you? How did you feel that day? How did you feel the next day? Was the hangover worth it? Did it ruin your whole weekend? Stop doing that. And you'll say, but doc, I go to happy hour, it's fun. Yeah, but okay, but what's the pattern? What's the cycle? If you want to be more productive all weekend, then your happy hour on Friday may be screwing up your productivity. There it is. You may not want to face that, but now we see the problem. And this is back to the problem-solving approach. Some things have an answer and we may not like the answer, but there it is. There's times in my professional life when I've given feedback to people and we point out, wow, you should avoid that relationship, or you feel better when you smoke less weed, or you feel worse when you spend time with this certain person, or you feel not happy in this job even though it makes a lot of money. Sometimes we come to an awareness and the patient will say, wow, that's amazing, we figured it out. And in a few weeks later, like, nah, I'm not going to change. Because change is hard, or because we have nostalgia, or because it gets complicated. If I change the job, then I lose the income, then I lose the... What we're looking at today is very narrowly what's going to help our psychosomatic health. And there's always pros and cons and gains and losses, and we need to weigh all that out. And that's when it helps to talk to a professional, or like I said, a more objective peer, and try to say, okay, listen, if I change jobs and do the career that I love, I'm going to make a hell of a lot less money. So I'm going to have to accept that maybe I would feel happiness through my career, and my happiness may not come through the car I own or the apartment I have. And finding that tipping point. But what happens is these patterns of behavior are something you have control over. And once you see it, then you have the ability to change it. But until you see it, it may not click. So many people, so many, ridiculous amount, I have helped understand that sleep is so integral to mood. And if we just get you a good night's sleep, you may not be clinically depressed. You might have just needed some sleep. And the sleep could be because you're working a split shift schedule. It could be because you got a new baby. It could be because you have terrible habits and you watch Netflix and look at Instagram for 2 hours at night when you should be in bed. There's a multitude of reasons it may be, but better sleep, often better feelings, better mood, better productivity. Let's figure out the sleep. I have it's not a fixed opinion, sometimes it's case by case, but I strongly believe that in many cases, postpartum depression is a word that is misaligned, a diagnosis that's misaligned, and really it is mom needs rest. And if the mother of a newborn did not have so much stress with pumping or breastfeeding, or simply residing in the same residence as a baby that is crying and in trouble to sleep, if you could just sleep, then you'll feel better. Often there is a hormonal component. Sometimes it's a re-triggering of old depression. That's why I don't want to make this a blanket thing to say Dr. Giardina doesn't believe in postpartum depression. It sometimes is kind of, but it's often misdiagnosed that, man, if we had more help, if we had less pressure as new mothers to breastfeed all the time or exclusively, if there's other things going on and you got a full night's rest, no depression, you're happy to have a new baby. Okay? So what we want to do is track all these patterns and understand that our behavior, things we have control over, or things that we can predict, because sometimes you don't have control over it, but you can predict when your period's coming. Can't stop it coming, but you know where it's going to fall on the calendar. This awareness then lets us make different choices, which creates, again, this domino effect. Our behavior is going to affect our thoughts, then our feelings, then our physical health. Track your patterns. Create a long data-filled log. And after you've got about 10 data points, 10 days, then we start to see patterns. And the reason we need a lot of data is because you don't see it today. It's usually kind of a hangover effect. That if you're funky on Saturday, what happened on Thursday and Friday? Did something happen? If you're super happy on Sunday, well then, yeah, I mean, something might have happened Sunday, but it might have been what you did the day before. Sometimes we're kind of setting ourselves up for success or failure. And so we need to be able to backtrack and then watch the data. Track your patterns. Tied to this, similar, but we're going to do it more in a 24-hour period, I would like you to be aware of your emotional stress. What I call this is monitoring your emotional credit level. If your credit card is about to max out, then you do two things. One, you usually get some kind of alert. Look out! You're about to go over your limit. It warns you. You get some kind of heads up. And two, I'm going to put a lot of money into paying that card down. That's the one that needs my attention. I should do something about it, not just neglect it because it's only going to build up. So what we're going to do is we're going to check in and try to figure out, what does my emotional credit limit look like today? Am I maxing out, or I got a plenty spending room? So here's how it looks to me. People, when they say they lost it, or they just exploded, or anytime there's sort of people say, I was up to here and then I popped. It's always here then pop. So if this is the top, then where is the baseline? So let's pretend it's at our belly button. And if you were to say that this is 0, I have nothing spent on my credit card. I've got all the spending power possible. Okay, then what happens through the day? And it's noticing these little things that are additive. What we want to do is recognize that, okay, I woke up a little late. Didn't have to go into work today because working from home, but still, I wasn't really prepared in the way I normally am for my morning meeting, so now I'm up here. And then I had to leave the house to go get something, and I left my mask at home, and then when I put it on, it was itchy and it was uncomfortable, and I was annoyed at the whole situation, and now I'm here. And then I got to the grocery store and they were out of toilet paper and milk, and that's annoying. I had to go to a second one, so now I'm here. So it's not even 10 a.m. You haven't hardly interacted with anybody you care about, and you're already past the halfway point in terms of I'm ready to pop off, in terms of I'm emotionally stressed, overwhelmed, my credit limit is going up, my debt. That little noise is making me go up a little bit. So what we can do is be self-aware and recognize that when we pop off, when we have that explosion, when we have that anxiety attack, when we have that moment of just falling apart, when we have that moment of talking unkindly to our partner, where the hell did that come from? That didn't just happen. That has been additive all day. And what we can do is become more conscious of each little thing, kind of mentally graphing, tracking, where am I at today, starting from AM to PM. It's just a 24-hour cycle, less than 24 hours, 12 hours. And then, what do you do with that? Because great, you know you're here, but we need a mechanism of action. We need a method. We need a way to pay down the credit level. We need a way to manage that psychosomatic stress. And so here's what I'm going to ask you to do. It's called self-soothing, which is nice fancy therapy speak for doing nice things to feel better. But self-soothing has very specific language in this subset of psychotherapy technique called DBT. DBT is something that was developed for people who have something called borderline personality. However, I use these skills for all of my patients. It does not mean, it's not only for people who have borderline personality as their diagnosis, it's for anybody who wants to feel better. So don't take it personally, don't worry about the diagnosis, it has this whole stigma, that's not what this is for. So I'm going to direct you to a website. Unfortunately, I couldn't figure out, I don't know how to quite load this up, so I'm going to read this to you slowly. The website is called dbtselfhelp.com. psychosomatic.com. And it's not a very well organized website. It's run by patients who have borderline personality. It's not a professionally organized website. I apologize for that, but it's the easiest place I can find this list that I photocopy and give to everyone without you having to buy the books. So the website is dbtselfhelp.com, and the specific link is /HTML/ER, that's for emotion regulation, ER_handout_8.html. I'm going to say that one more time. dbtselfhelp.com /HTML/ER_handout_8, the number 8.html. And what this will provide you is this list that I give probably 70% of my patients of coping skills, self-soothing skills, things that a person could do to bring down this emotional credit level. And it is very idiot-proof stuff. I love the simple solutions. It is things like smell some lavender, eat a chocolate, get a massage, masturbate, buy something, go for a walk, take a shower, hug a puppy, and some are even a little bit more thrilling, recognizing you don't always want to be calm. Ride a motorcycle, gamble, which sound like bad things or like, how do you want to say, vice. But sometimes we need to shift our mood. Sometimes I need that whatever. And what I need right now is to drive really fast on the highway and then go gamble $100. And maybe that thrill will divert my energy. So there's no judgment in which of these activities you choose. What we need to know is that most of us do some version of these activities every day, but I want to make it more conscious and something more volitional, something more that we're all intentionally doing. So what you do is you take this list that I'm directing you to, and you make your own list of things that I could do to self-soothe. So if I'm feeling not great in whatever direction the emotions took you, whatever your day did to your mood level, it doesn't matter. Because then you're going to choose from that list the things that apply to you and say, right now, yeah, I think a walk outside and a lollipop sounds great. Or right now, I think some real vigorous sex with my partner and a glass of scotch sounds great. Or right now, I think I would very much like to be alone and reading a book in a dark room. You tailor it to you, but then when the time comes, I don't want you to flail and spaz and think, okay, what am I supposed to be doing with myself? I'm upset, now what? There shouldn't be that moment of now what, because now we've got our list, and so we're prepared. And the thought here becomes when you have your self-soothing list, now I feel my emotional credit level going up, I'm self-aware, not self-conscious, I'm aware, and now I know what to do. And think about it. If you have a tummy ache, what do? You either eat some food or take Pepto-Bismol. If you have a headache, what do? You maybe take some caffeine or you take an Aleve. You know what to do if I feel a certain way physiologically, usually. And so this is what we do if there's that emotional stress, that psychosomatic leaning towards more stress, we want to bring it back towards more health, then we become conscious if I do these things, it's kind of back to them noticing the patterns, then I pay down my emotional credit level. I have self-soothed. And the second thing we're going to do, when we're aware that that emotional credit limit is going up throughout the day, is that I'm going to communicate to the people in my life. Hey guys, not a good day, so sorry, or maybe I need more space, or maybe I could use a hug, or it's not you, I'm already annoyed at the guy at Starbucks, so sorry if some of that came this way. And now it allows the people in your life to perhaps help with the soothing. You're enlisting them, but you're also making sure you don't burn these bridges, because I'm letting you know that I walked into this room here. So don't piss me off. Don't ask a difficult question. Maybe today's not the day to say, hey, have you had this deep thought? Because I'm already here. Catch me at a better time. And so we're setting everybody up for success, for healthier communication patterns, for healthier relationships, and so that way you don't feel the shame spiral that happens after you do explode and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I yelled at my kid or my spouse. Well, we could have avoided that if we noticed that pattern, if we tracked our level throughout the day, and if we're aware that, whoa, it's getting high, I need to pay it down through doing self-soothing, and or I need to tell people, hey, Daddy's having a rough day. I'm sorry, I should just, I don't want to accidentally get upset. Let me take some space. You're making it so we don't have to have the cycle. Questions on that? We good? Monitor the emotional credit level. Okay. Not getting a lot of questions, so we might have time to get into some of the theory behind all this at the end. Okay, so tied to these last two tips I gave you, monitoring your behavior pattern and monitoring your stress level throughout the day. So one is longer term data and the other one's just in that AM to PM. Tied to these, what I would ask you to do that kills two birds with one stone is to take some of these self-soothing activities, take some of these things that you know pay down the emotional credit, some of these things that make you feel better, that generally improve your mood or your mental state. Take these, and instead of being reactive with them, be more proactive. Schedule them in. I don't want you to walk around like this and say, God, I need a massage. Dude, if it's within your budget, if we're not in quarantine, schedule a massage once a month or every 2 weeks. It's there waiting for you. So then we're always bringing the level down. If I were to draw a graph, I don't have something I can draw, but let me just show you. Like, if the stress level's here, and then it's going up, and it's going up, and it's going up, and we try to pay it down, like, it may be too late. But if the stress level's here, and it's going up, and then we pay it down right there, then we come back down the baseline. And we're going along, and it's going up again. Oh, there's another thing that brings it down. So if there's always markers throughout your week, throughout your month, things that are going to help you bring that overall mental, physical, whole body stress down, if it's there planned, then it's not reactive. We don't wait till it gets like too bad. The example I give, one of the things I do through behavioral medicine is sometimes I help chronic pain patients. So we rate pain on a 1 to 10 scale or 0 to 10 scale. And so if you wait to take your pain medication until you're at a 10, if that pain medication only brings you down 3 units of pain, now you're still at a 7. But if you had taken that pain medication earlier in the day, when you were at a 5, well, now it brings you down 3 units and you're at a 2, and that's manageable. And so we always want to ride the wave of bringing it down before it gets too high, because some of our techniques, be they medication or self-soothing activities, will only bring you down so many notches of emotional credit level, of stress, of pain, what it may be. So by plotting on your calendar that I have these self-soothing activities already there, then it's proactive. And I like it because A, it's a guarantee, it's on the calendar, it's going to happen. But B, there's a different feeling of power, there's a different feeling of ownership when you're managing that stress in mind and body on a consistent, predictive, proactive self-care basis. It feels like I'm doing good for me. It feels like I'm running a good ship. It feels like I'm in control. It can feel very out of control and reactionary, and then some people feel guilt or neediness if they're like, well, I guess now I should go get a massage because I pulled something in my neck. Like, don't wait until you have to. Make it something so it's just proactive and it feels good. And it's a different tone. I don't know quite how else to explain it other than that, but there's an ownership of this plotted in. Okay, last one. And this one might seem obvious, but it bears stating because partly this is what my dissertation research was on 10 or 15 years ago, but it's also something I have a big interest in doing psychotherapy every day. We need to acknowledge, express, release our emotions. So much strain on, so much psychosomatic illness is from held in emotions. If we release them, there's so much healing that comes. And it's not just in the mind or in the psyche. It is physiologic. There's even some practitioners, some researchers who believe that pain or trauma is held in certain places of the body, causing then certain specific illnesses. And so what we do is if we're releasing the emotion, the stress that we carry on this section, it has this cascade effect down here. Because I see that we've got some time, I will elaborate slightly more here and say that this is what's called allostatic load, when we have too much stress, emotional stress, other stressors, psychosocial stress, everything stress. And this is why we get sick after finals, because now you've worn down your immune system, not because, sometimes because you're eating poorly and staying up late, but because you're stressing and your immune system is worn down by all the emotional stress. This is also, there are theories, I can't say it's 100% accurate, but around personality types. And the type A personality, of people who tend to be very rigid and controlling and on the edge of their seats and anxious, tend to have more heart disease. And the type C personality, just people who are more cancer prone, tend to withhold all their emotions and not express any. So too much anger, too much anxiety, probably going to have a heart attack. It's the pattern, it's not a guarantee. And holding it all in and acting like everything's fine and never being upset in any direction might get more cancer. This is the trend. And so we want to express the emotion, release it, and then it brings down the pressure on the immune system, on the sympathetic nervous system, on the fight or flight system. And the cascade effect goes from what today might mean my less tension in my shoulders and less headache. 10 years from now, the chronic additive amount of that could have led to a heart attack. So the daily maintenance matters. I strongly recommend, if you're interested in learning more, lost my microphone. This book, it's quite dated. This is something I imagine there's a new edition, or there's more research since then. This is from 1998, so I should buy new books. But Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers explains this physiology and explains what's called psychoneuroimmunology. Helps you understand how reducing emotional stress and mental stress reduces the impact on your physiology. It also explains a little bit more of the science behind it. Okay. But again, I told you I would give you coaching tips today. So what do? You can let it out anyway. Anyway. The research shows so many pathways and avenues that work for releasing the emotional load that you're carrying. You can see a therapist. Obviously, I recommend that, but it doesn't have to be that. You can talk to a priest or a rabbi or a religious leader. You can talk to a best friend. You can journal it and not tell anybody. The research shows that there is a slightly better effectiveness by communicating to another human, because there's this, give-take. You feel heard. But literally, if you just journal it, we've even done some study, I haven't done it, but people have done studies where if you write it and you burn it or delete it from the computer, so there's no hope of anyone ever reading it, it's never shared anywhere, it still makes you feel better. Sometimes with severe trauma, this is even the best way to do it, because I carry so much shame or guilt or embarrassment or whatever ickiness around my trauma, I feel self-conscious about sharing it. Okay, you don't have to tell anybody, but the unloading of it is what's key. And it's not just the unloading, but the talking. Talking and giving it language is so helpful in the verbal or in the written, because now you're processing. You're changing the narrative. There's a whole school of psychotherapy around the narrative structure, around the story, around who did what to who. And it reworks how we carry this emotion and how it then impacts our behaviors, our relationships, and then, back to the body. Okay? You don't even have to let it out towards a person or in language. Maybe you just need to cry in the shower. Maybe you just need to laugh at a funny video on your phone. But giving it expression and release it has so many good health properties. And what we also find, and this is important especially for anger, in some cases, release of anger, the old 70s era stuff would say, let's take a bat and hit something, or hit a punching bag, or hit a pillow, or scream into a pillow. And the more up-to-date research shows that the expression of anger in those more primal ways, while it may feel good immediately, it creates this cycle, this feeling of I need to get angry, which can long-term have a negative effect. So what we want to get to is that it's a release, but what's called sublimation, meaning that the emotions come out, but they don't need to come out in the exact same form that they are felt. So anger does not need to come out as anger. Sadness does not need to come out as sadness. Sometimes the most healing you see is when somebody has a giggling fit at the funeral of their loved one. And while it may look inappropriate, or you think funerals are where you cry, like maybe I've cried enough and that hasn't got me anywhere, and now this is what I needed. And sometimes they'll even say, that laugh is just what I needed. Sometimes when you're angry, then having a good cry, you're not sad, but it just releases differently. So the emotional expression, in whatever form it comes, I will not dictate. But I'll tell you that across the board, any way you can get it out, the getting it out helps. And the way I explain this to my patients is that if your emotions are jello, you can hold them in your hand like this, but then people are privy to them. And sometimes we get self-conscious, and I don't want to show you my emotions, and I want to be vulnerable. I'm going to go like this. Then you can't see my emotions. But what happens to my jello? Does it stay in there? Nope, it squishes out. Messy and unpredictable, and you don't know which finger hole it's coming out of, and it's just all over the place. So the holding in of emotions always has a secondary negative effect somewhere. And in this case of our conversation today, it's that psychosomatic health cycle. The withheld emotion is going to do something. And it may not be heart disease or cancer, but it might simply be I get more headaches because I'm clenching my jaw because I'm so angry at you, but I don't want to say it. And it causes TMJ and it causes headaches and messes with your dental. There's always going to be an impact. But with the release, there's always a better feeling. Even though, and I get this feedback from many of my patients in therapy, sometimes the release does not feel good at the time. Sometimes confronting your trauma, expressing your emotions, sitting across from another human being and being witness in that vulnerability, it can get worse before it gets better. Full disclosure. But some things are worth the effort. All these 5 things I've just listed for you today are going to take a little bit of effort. You're going to have to do more than you're doing. But if it has a positive outcome, it's worth it. Okay. No questions? Everybody seems good? Okay. So the last thing I'm going to say, just to explain this a little bit more, we're dealing with the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. We're trying to turn off the fight or flight, which is the sympathetic, trying to turn on the parasympathetic. We're trying to create a cascade of different chemicals and different release of things in the brain such that it mimics an antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication. That's what all these things I just listed will do through behaviors. Behavioral medicine, behavioral action, then leads to the controlling things that you couldn't normally control. You can't willfully just bear down and make yourself be calm. But by taking action these ways that are both preventative and reactive, then it brings on, it reduces the stress on the mind and then thusly on the body. Keep in mind that sometimes there's a secondary gain. Sometimes we want to stay stressed. We want to stay unhealthy because it gets something. It manipulates something. Maybe it keeps a person in our life because they need to help us. Maybe it keeps us from having to go back to work because we're too sick. Maybe it makes people more sympathetic towards us. So be conscious of that too, that sometimes we choose the sick role. We choose to not make ourselves well, and we need to wonder why. Where did I learn that pattern? Is it benefiting me? And lastly, I'll say, I hinted at this earlier about what we consume. We look at a pattern. We look at, I'm putting what food or chemicals or alcohol or whatever in our body, but look at what you consume in terms of your environment. And that's something you can, that's my last bonus tip. Look around. Is the lighting too harsh? Are the colors in here nice? What music am I hearing? What, am I listening to the news or am I listening to pleasant sounds? Who's in my space? Who am I spending time with? What am I wearing? Do I like these colors? Do I like this fabric? Do I like this couch I'm sitting on? Is my posture good? All these things add up. I hired a physical therapist for an hour and made him come to my office just to look at the chair I sit in, because I sit in a chair all day long. And we arranged an ergonomic setup because, listen, it started with my neck hurt a little from writing. But then it leads to I'm uncomfortable in this chair. Then it leads to I'm uncomfortable in this space. Then it leads to I'm stressed. Now I'm dreading going to work. Now look at this trickle down. So there's all these little things in our environment and what we consume and what comes into here that we can do better about being aware of. That's your little bonus tip number 6 on how to reduce this psychosomatic stress and improve mind-body health. Thank you all for listening today. I hope this was helpful. If you're in the Miami or Coral Gables area, I'd be happy to see you either in person once we reopen or I'm doing telehealth sessions. You can find me at Coral Gables Counseling Center. That's the name of my group practice that I'm a part of. It's also the website coralgablescounseling.com. Or you can find my information at my website, drtoddjardina.com. That's DrToddGiardina. And that's also my Instagram handle. I provide tips like this ongoing, and you will find some information on my website about how to reach me, as well as blogs, video blogs. We have a podcast, and I have some coping skills tips there, including, like I said, the breathing and muscle relaxation audio tracks. Let's all be well. Let's be kind to ourselves in this time. There's an extra level of stress here. We could all use something a little bit more. Try one of these 5.5 tips, and I hope this brings you better mind-body health. Thank you, Kensho Health, for having me.